What is up, blockchain gang? First, I want to apologize for my appearance as your boy just pulled a Forrest Gump and walked 23 kilometers this week. And I would have cleaned up first, but a wasp has recently taken up residence in my shower and squatters' rights and all. I just wanted to take a second to thank whoever used my friend code in sneakers and warn you that I'm not investing anything in this platform. They just rolled out their new 2.0 tokenomics and nobody knows what to expect or even if it's working properly yet. So buyer beware. Today, we are going over the differences between a blockchain and a database because Web 2.0 slow gamers are consistently saying that a database can do everything a blockchain can do but better. I am so tired of destroying this flaccid argument on an individual basis that I'm going to compile all of my data into one video so that anyone can share it freely or use it for their own benefit, just like the blockchain does, instead of keeping it private as if I stored it on a centralized database. Do you see what I did there? You weren't even ready yet, and I've already begun. Now, I know there are dozens of videos on YouTube explaining the differences between the blockchain and the database, but I don't like all the ones that I've watched so far. No offense to the creators, but maybe it's because they're assuming that their audience is already in favor of blockchain technology, or because they are all 5 years old and the bar for a good explanation video on YouTube has been raised numerous times since then.
I can hear the drums in the distance. I could feel the fear, the resistance. Everything can change in an instant. You might stay alive if you listen.
Now, we have many points to go over, but corporate would first like to conduct a preliminary assessment to gauge your knowledge before and after viewing this video. So if you could tell us the difference between these two pictures, that would be great. Now, data-based gamers would look at this and say they are the same picture, noting how both of these modes of transportations can get you from point A to point B. However, they ignore the speed, cost, maintenance, versatility, convenience, security, and lack of smelling like horseshit that one option provides, an attempt to fool people into thinking they know jack shit about cars.
This is war, you won't take me. This is war, you can't break me.
Of course, these vehicles also have their drawbacks, but rather than criticize them objectively, seeking to improve upon those downsides, they ignore all potential pros and cons, which is a dangerous thing. Imagine finding out that cars were bad for the environment, like the mining of blockchains. Within a few short years, the vast majority of transactions are now taking place on proof-of-stake chains that don't harm the environment. When compared to the automotive industry, they fought back in denial of harm with fake science for 30 years before finally admitting they were the cause, taking billions of dollars from global governments in turn to work on trying to do a little bit less of that over the next 50 years. It isn't like gamers really care about the environment or semiconductors anyway when they're running a 1300 watt power supply with an RTX 3090 just to boot up a 20-year-old game every day. They blame the problems with the environment and supply shortages on the blockchain using a post hoc fallacy, insisting that because we have these problems, the blockchain could be the only cause, ignoring the fact that the blockchain couldn't have been the cause of the chip shortages of 88, 94, 99, 04, and 2011. Most of these shortages were caused by restrictive political policies, trade war lawsuits, and natural disasters. Or perhaps maybe, I don't know, Donald Trump and COVID-19?
So stand strong, stand tall, stay up, don't fall, give it everything you got.
B.Y.O.B 2.0 gamers want their game economies to be closed, just like their minds, where all items exist on a centralized database and cannot freely escape to other databases. Their entertainment is held hostage by the devs in this way. Since this is not transparent and entirely under control of the developers, what we really have here is an economami, a benevolent invisible hand guiding their supply and demand curves so they can suck their thumb and listen to the economami sing them a lullaby at bedtime as they drift off into candy dreamland. The downside is that you have to deal with the economami's bullshit when she brings home a drunk biker from the bar at 2 a.m. or quit the game and lose everything you've earned so far. You could also technically break the rules and risk getting banned. Those are your only options in the traditional world of gaming, and these masochists are fighting for developers to retain this control over all future games. Trust is king to these fungible token fighters who are fraught with keeping their currencies on the database. They believe any transaction should be private, which protects bots and exploiters as well as crooked developers who are not spending development funds on development. They believe that the only way you can have a fair and safe transaction is when a third party collects a fee to oversee the deal and keep everything on the level, such as Steam or Zola or Google. When we replace that third party with code at a fraction of the cost, all parties not only save money and fees, but we also have a huge reduction in human error or corruption introduced by this third party. Think about refund exploiters and transactions that fail to process due to internet usage.
I got this if it's more than I'm on top of it. I got fuel for days, it's a weapons that you can't stop, yeah. I won't think twice until the end of me won't make it out alive. I got a full supply of energy and might you pick the wrong side,
Let's get into the organizational differences, because it is possible for a database to be transparent. However, it is almost never used this way in gaming. Just because a developer can use a database similar to how a blockchain operates doesn't mean that they will do that, or should. Databases use tables, and it's possible for anyone with read access to view this data or compile it. With write access, they could change what is in the tables and completely exploit the game. Since a blockchain is immutable, it is impossible for anyone to gain write access by default, unless consensus is reached by the community and the users choose to change the rules for the benefit of the majority of its users. Now, since the data is stored in a block, which is then linked to the block that precedes it and the block that succeeds it, users are able to locate data easier by using this cross-section of time that the block was created at. This chronological order of creation doesn't just allow us to find information faster and more reliably, but also allows each user to keep their own ledger.
Here I go, taking every single blow to the dome, never slow, pushing through it cause you know that I chose to be known, legendary I'ma show everybody in this battle that comes close, they expose.
Imagine in a game of baseball, if only one person was keeping score, such as the umpire. They never told anyone what the score was and had a heart attack, so now nobody knows who won the game. Centralized databases are a single point of failure, and if compromised or even suffer from a power loss, there can be a complete or partial loss of data. Since everyone on the blockchain is keeping score at the same time, there's no single point of failure for this data to be lost. Since all data is public, it's not possible to breach it, as seen in many game databases in the past.
This is war, you won't take me. This is war, you can't break me. It's just me, no saving.
I'm the only one who could save me.
Furthermore, blockchains are able to hold logic or entire programs on them, such as smart contracts that can be compiled to use the blockchain's information for an infinite amount of creative use cases. This means that community-driven websites have all the power to help players as the developers do, utilizing in-game systems from the blockchain games. This opens the door to user-generated content like we've never before seen for future generations of gamers who embrace and conquer this technology. An example of this is a game I play called Gods Unchained. There are at least 6 websites that can be used that give players more access to information other than the game itself provides. The Aqua XYZ third-party market was even so successful that it was adopted as the official market due to the team's ability to create features the devs couldn't include, either from a lack of time, knowledge, or because they just didn't think of it themselves.
So stand strong, stand tall, stay up, don't fall, give it everything you got.
Now, let's take a trip back in time on Ebrick's bus. Hop on, everybody. Last one on the bus has to drive. Whoa! In its simplest terms, a database is just a way for the user to communicate with the stored memory of a computer. The first database was rumored to be a punch card used in 1890 by Herman Hollerith to mechanically store data that needed to be recalled while weaving looms. In 1960, Charles Bachman designed the integrated database system, while this was replicated by IBM, who were the main competitors in this market. By the late 1960s, IBM had a stranglehold over the financial sector with their IMS system. In the 70s, IBM employee Edgar Codd wrote a paper about organizing data in a relational database that could be iterated over with algebra or calculus. IBM didn't give Codd's paper any merit due to their investment in IMS until their competitors started using this form of database themselves. This type of database allowed searching for data to be streamlined as opposed to how difficult it was in previous systems. The language for this was named SQL, but later had to be named to SQL due to Relational Software Inc.'s ability to copy the code and bring it to market as Oracle before IBM. Over the next few decades, as computers became much faster at computing data, the need for structured data began to wane in favor of unstructured data such as photographs and sound. In 1991, mathematicians Stuart Haber and W. Scott Stornetta began experimenting with timestamp databases and would go on to create the first blockchain that would be studied later by cypherpunk Nick Szabo in 1999. To come up with a concept of using the blockchain as a digital payment system called BitGold, but the concept was never attempted. After the financial collapse of 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto used this BitGold as their inspiration when creating Bitcoin as an alternative to traditional financial institutions that was outside the manipulation of central banks and governments. Wait. Let's back up on the database side to 1995. David Axmark, Alan Larson, and Michael Widnius launched MySQL. The biggest factors of MySQL were that it was open source, supported nearly any programming language, it was very reliable, searchable, and offered built-in security by only allowing predetermined users to access it with encrypted passwords. As people desired to retrieve large forms of unstructured data such as videos, NoSQL, or not only structured query language, was created for this need on platforms such as social media sites, with the only drawback being the massive amounts of power, CPU, and RAM required to operate them. In addition, these requirements are met many times over due to redundancies using a distribution architecture because databases are susceptible to that single point of failure. But these troglodytes care about the environment, remember? The 90s also saw the rise of the intelligent databases that were capable of being taught how to mine the internet for user data, quantify the quality of that data, and sell it to potential buyers. This industry of selling user data grew to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars per year. That is why there is so much money spent to sway the public opinion against using decentralized blockchains in video games, in the media, and the majority of influencer circle jerk hive minds. This deprives these companies that make hundreds of billions of dollars off of selling your data, tens of billions of dollars from the traditional financial institutions in the form of payment processing, and tens of billions of dollars from game publishers who also take a cut of the action to help with distribution costs, which they also create and control, as well as developers who want to keep selling you the same shit year after year after year while keeping you powerless in extracting any value from their databases for yourself. That concludes this time travel trip in Ebrick's bus. Please exit the bus in an orderly fashion and return all seats to their upright position. If you are experiencing a gnawing feeling in the pit of your stomach with the realization that all of the time you spent being entertained by video games was actually a con to keep you running on a wheel like a rat in a cage while your data was secretly exploited and sold to the highest bidder, it's merely a coincidence due to the side effects of time travel. This isn't an episode of Black Mirror, okay? It's not like I'm trying to expose the fact that we've all been playing to earn this whole time, except the earnings all went to other people who weren't even responsible for the creation of the game. This is just a guide on the many differences between databases and blockchains. The key principle of programming is don't repeat yourself, or dry. Of course, the opposite of dry is wet, or waste everyone's time, and this is what most community websites have to do. Wet reverse engineer the game logic in order to get as close as possible to the real thing without ever actually knowing how close you really are. While using the blockchain, you literally have the blocks that were used to create the game and used to build whatever tools you want. We don't have to guess what the Krabby Patty secret formula is anymore, or devise some ruthless plot for world domination just to figure it out. You see, when two companies have to transact with each other, they are both using their own separate databases. This creates the issue of trust because each database administrator is paid to have their company's best interests at heart, and not the company they are interacting with. If one company made a slight change to how their database works in their favor, the other company may never even know about it. Alternatively, a bad actor could pay off the DBA to make a nefarious change to the database and both companies would have no idea. Since the blockchain has no corporate interest, it can be trusted by both companies to be fair and not give an advantage to either one. This makes fraud and error much less prevalent in all areas, including gaming. Now, that time has come to take the second assessment to gauge my ability as a teacher. But to ensure the best possible outcome for me, I'm going to make this open book and give you all of the answers. Here we go. Corporate would like you to tell the difference between these two images. Hint: the blockchain has no single point of failure like a database, and doesn't require exceedingly crazy amounts of power and hardware to overcompensate for this fact with redundancies. The blockchain allows for transactions to occur without a third party since it's trustless and verifiable, while the database is kept secret and wastes money in the form of verification. Databases are susceptible to data breaches from hackers who steal personal info of users, including bank details. Blockchains have the ability to work together in an open-loop economy instead of each service requiring you to use a separate database, often containing the exact same information. The blockchain empowers user-generated content, while the database often makes this impossible or at least very limited in functionality and can be changed without notice. Since the blockchain is time-stamped, game developers can incorporate this along with their in-game anti-cheat detection to pinpoint and eradicate exploiters before they're able to cause significant damage to the ecosystem. While users are accessing data from databases, the databases are also accessing users' data to be compiled and sold, often without the end user even being aware of this or compensated. So is the answer A, they're the same picture, or B, everything I just said that was the answer is the answer? Choose carefully. Thank you for watching. If you would like to argue about this or anything really, step inside my comment section and we can settle this dispute verba a verba. And don't forget to subscribe so we can do this again sometime.